Welcome to our albeit quite small studio audience, but welcome to everybody who's watching us today live as we launch the Community Justice Glasgow annual report and the Street Cones film today. So thank you for coming along. My name is Tom Jackson. I'm the Head of Community Justice at Glasgow City Council. I'm going to say a few words about our annual report, and I hope what that does is entice you to look at it yourself and to read it. This is our fourth annual report. It is our second digital report. I think there's something just to say about the format of it, that being a digital report, it provides quite a breadth of material because we can put a lot more in it. It gives us the opportunity to put quite a range of different materials. So you'll find videos, you'll find hyperlinks to reports that are out there, you'll find audio content. And it also means it's a searchable document. So you don't have to read through pages and pages. Search it, find the material you want to know about. So I hope people are enticed to look at it. I want to thank everybody who's helped us to get to this point. It's not an easy task to put together an annual report. We're really fortunate that all of our partners have been able to contribute to it, to write their stories, to tell us what they think about community justice. So you'll be able to read from perspectives of Police Scotland, from social work, from a range of third sector partners as well, and hear their stories about community justice in Glasgow. Few key points, just kind of what are we finding? Because one of the points of the annual report is to share with you how things are going. And by and large, I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of positive things we can say about the last year for community justice in Glasgow. One of the key messages is the strength of the partnerships, our ability to collaborate. And during the past year with the pandemic, we've been tested to be able to do that. And we've been able to respond well, again, only because we have a quality of partnerships that's really robust. And you'll see that in what people have written. I think as well, it's worth looking at the fact that reconviction rates in the city, by and large, are down. So people going through the justice system are less likely now to reoffend than they were 5 years ago or even last year. There are some exceptions within that. And again, the detail is there. If you look at certain groups, particularly under 18s, we're seeing some rise in reoffending levels, but nothing like it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What we're also seeing, interestingly, this year is a continued improvement, both in terms of personal outcomes and completion rates for people on a community sentence. And that's been a long-term trend, and it's good to see that that trend has continued into this year. With that said, what we are, though, seeing this year is the break in a trend where we had been seeing an increase in the percentage of community sentences against the overall number of sentences in our courts in Glasgow. So we were disappointed to see a small drop in that percentage this year. We say that only because we know the evidence base there is there to say that community sentences pay value in terms of reoffending levels, pay value in terms of our community benefit. We are pleased to see overall that offending levels in the city, crime in the city, recorded crime has gone down. Again, not in all categories, but in virtually all categories, we're seeing a continued trend in the reduction of crime. Probably the biggest concern for us is the continued reliance on custody, not just within Glasgow, but across Scotland. We have the highest incarceration rates in Europe. And this year in particular, we've seen a growth in people being remanded into custody where maybe that wasn't the necessary outcome. And we know that there's a potential of a damaging effect when people are in custody for very short periods of time. So as I said, I hope you'll go on to our website. I hope you'll go on to our Twitter feed and find the links and check out the annual report this year and give us some feedback on that. What I'd like to do now is turn over to Adam Robertson. Adam's one of the creative forces behind Street Cones, and he's also the director and the writer for the film that you're about to see. So over to yourself, Adam.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you and welcome to everyone who is tuning in, whether you're tuning in through Street Cones, the website, or through the YouTube channel, or watching it on Facebook. Just really happy to have you here, albeit virtually. It's just great to have you. And for this film, we were commissioned by Margaret Smith at Community Justice Glasgow, and a big thank you to her for asking Street Cones to do this film. And it's one of several now that I've had the privilege to direct. It's the first one that I've written and directed, and I feel like it's a real kind of development of the previous film that we made about community payback orders, some of which you might have seen in the introduction video there, because this film was really about looking at the myths and the realities of prison in particular, but it did end up having a focus on community payback orders because as we spoke to some of the lived experience individuals who you'll get to meet at the end at the Q&A, we just started to really realise the benefits and the power of community sentences as opposed to custodial. As Tom just referred to just now, there is a undue heavy reliance on custody and the effects are almost overwhelmingly kind of negative. And so this particular film is one that I'm very, very proud of. I'm proud of the actors in it, and I'm really proud of the talking heads, the lived experience individuals in it who informed the narrative ultimately. So, without much further ado, we'll go on to the film, but please, at the end of it, for the Q&A section, send in your comments and your questions via YouTube, via Facebook, or you can always send your questions and comments to mark@streetcones.org. So any questions or comments, mark@streetcones.org. So without further ado, and I always wanted to say this, roll the film.
So that I can see you and I can see where everyone is. The community like to see that actually people are carrying out community service, and I actually think the guys actually like for the public to see that they are serving their punishment and they are being beneficial to the local community. Do you think anyone
feels a bit embarrassed about wearing this?
I think maybe, possibly at first a little, but I think once they get on with the work and they get the positive reaction from the public that walk past, they really do second it.
Aki should all be locked up. This idea of giving criminals a paintbrush and telling them, doesn't matter you rob some poor woman's house. Go away and paint that fence there and think about your crime. A load of rubbish.
It's the kids, it's everybody. It's like, see when a partner or somebody you love goes to prison, it's horrible. We're left to, one, we're worried about them getting into prison, like how they're going to cope, whatever. We're worried about how we're going to manage to send them money every week, hand them in clothes, and then you've got to live without them. And if you've got kids, it's really, really hard because you're left then to do everything. Your kids are missing their dad or whoever's went into prison. And I always say we're doing the sentence too. I don't care what MD says on that, we are doing the sentence too.
I tell you, you've gone soft. You can't do the time, don't do the crime. Mind you, run places like bloody holiday camps these days. 3 square meals a day, and PlayStations and Sky TV. Christ, before we know it, they'll have spas and bloody jacuzzis in them and all.
I always hear the term holiday camp being used, which is, you know, I hear that a lot. But literally, I mean, I remember occasions of, you know, when I was in prison over the time that was there, three guys killed themselves. They took their own lives. Didn't know them personally. I knew one of them. I came out my cell a couple of times, and because where I was located, there was guys sitting there that had slashed their wrists. So I'd seen that a few times, which is what it is. Then you've got the violence, you know, and it's a lot. It's something that's kind of laughed about, or sometimes it's just not even spoken about. But the violence within prison can be quite a regular thing, and it can be quite brutal.
A university for doing crime, that's all they are. And it's not all about where you come from. If you're a scheme punter, then the chances are you'll do time at some point. But I grew up in a scheme and I never chose a life of crime. There's always options.
I suffered with addiction and mental health, both. Because of my mental health, I got addicted to drugs and alcohol. I found my life becoming unmanageable because of trauma and things like that that's happened throughout my life. The fact is, like, my son and my daughter and my family knowing that I've went to prison, and for them to see that was just, you know, they were frantic.
This idea you can go and pick some litter and then, like, that's it, you're made up for all the wrong you did. Nonsense. What is it to say about leopards? Oh, it's bloody true. Once an offender, always an offender.
But when I actually got officially put into B-hole and my sentence started, that's what broke me. Like, I was able to make a phone call that night to my girlfriend, now wife, and I phoned her and I'm just like, and I burst out greeting, and obviously you don't want to show that you get your feelings within that environment. And she's like, everything will be all right, everything will be fine, we'll work through this. And then obviously my daughter wanted to talk to me. As soon as she spoke, that was me. I was like, I need to go, I can't do this. So I had to walk from one end of the hall to the other end of the hall. Well, people knew that I was crying, were laughing, thinking it was funny. And I had to just get right into my cell, and just I broke down, and that killed me.
Nice flowers, eh? Someone special.
Flowers are from my sister. She was inside. Only a short sentence. Some would say for a petty crime, theft mainly, but a crime nonetheless. One she was willing to pay the price for. She wasn't lucky enough to get a CPO. I don't think she'd agree with your holiday camp opinion either.
If I had went to prison, I know for a fact I'd be back on drugs. I couldn't cope. It's really guilty as well, because I'm in there, my kids are out here, they're suffering, other people are suffering, and jails, I've seen people get into jails who have went in for a minor thing and come out with drug habits and things like that. There's no way I could go into a prison and my life would spiral down from there, definitely.
See, our boyfriend, the father of our wee girl, he died. And it just totally devastated her. She couldn't cope. Counselling didn't work, so she was put on prescription drugs. That led to stronger ones, illegal ones. And she started missing days at work, so they let her go. And she started thieving to pay for her habit. And eventually she was caught and sentenced.
Well, I wouldn't say that prison's easy. It's not a walk in the park, believe me. They don't know. You don't know what these people have done. I mean, they could have killed somebody. You're in with, all sorts of people who, like, are really violent towards themselves. You're round about people who are vulnerable. You're about people who you don't really know. You don't know how they're going to react towards you. And basically, you don't have any freedom.
I would hope that would be the wake-up call that she needed, And she tried to keep her head down while she was inside, but she got bullied by some of the other inmates, and she found it quite lonely, isolating. And then she lost her tenancy, so she was technically homeless. And she missed her wee girl's first steps. And her second birthday. She wasn't there to comfort her gran when she got her cancer diagnosis. She was meant to get out after 6 months. She got into a fight with some of the other inmates that were bullying her, and they added another 6 months onto her sentence. And her mental health just took a turn for the worse. She couldn't take it. She died. Took her own life.
I'm so sorry. Look, I'm a big mouth. I need to learn to keep my opinions to myself. I'm sorry, truly.
Look, I put fresh flowers on her gravestone the 1st of every month. My sister, she wasn't from a scheme. No, she went to college. She studied beauty therapy and hairdressing. She had plans and ambition. Life got in the way. Life had other plans and she paid a heavy price. Too heavy. Look, I don't know how things would have turned out. I just think that if she would have got a community payback order, that she wouldn't have lost her tenancy. She would have got the help and support that she needed, and she could have been there for a wee girl. She could have comforted her gran while she was ill. She might still be here. It's just things aren't as black and white as the tabloids would like us to believe, that's all. Anyway, you keep the change, all right? And look after yourself.
Everything's spherical. We were too small, climbing to be tall. No one's about this world's a good shout. These fields are ours, but only for an hour or two. Will we feel this way of life again? Come over here, borders cross this.
I don't know if I'm thankful for it, and I don't want people to think it's all right to get into trouble and get community service because great things come out of it, because that's not the case. It's just it's opened so many doors for me now, and I've got so much out of it.
I think if I was to go back and be able to say something to my younger self, it would probably be remove myself from the environment that I was in. Maybe a bit sooner than what I did, but yeah, to just try and start again, start fresh.
I'd then taken that choice to then just start again. So I decided just to go back to the beginning, take a job and try and prove myself to employers.
Time to build, time to shine. We have to be something. Why can't we be nothing? Time to be artificial.
Welcome back. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's still hearing the story there. It's quite a powerful piece. I see questions are already starting to come in. I'm delighted with that. But let me first introduce our panel, if I can. I'm going to start on my far right with Jack, our taxi driver. If you want to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, my name is Jack Carswell, and I play the taxi driver.
Thank you. Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Campbell and I'm a Shine Women's Mentor.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Smith. I'm Head of Justice Social Work for Glasgow.
And you've met Adam and myself. Over to yourself, Yvonne.
I'm Yvonne, and I'm part of the filming.
Thank you, Yvonne. And Brendan.
I am Brendan, and I was also part of the film.
That's great. Well, you'll excuse me if I'm reading my phone as these questions start to come in. Adam, first question to yourself. As a director, we often assume you start a project knowing all the answers, but is there anything you learned in this film?
God, yeah, every project's a learning experience, but we're always informed by the lived experience of the people we're lucky enough and privileged enough to work with. And this narrative was born out of the interviews that we had with people like Yvonne and Brendan and Tracy and Sam and Jerry in the film. And we started to kind of uncover this narrative that although there's absolutely a place for custodial sentences, you wondered how different, if our goal as a society is to rehabilitate, you wonder how effective we could pursue that goal if there was less of a reliance on custodial sentences. And so there seems to be, as the title suggests, the myths and realities of criminal justice, this story mainly promoted by the tabloids that prison is a holiday camp. You know, people have heard it. We've all heard it. You know, it's a holiday camp. Come on. And then when you actually interview people who have lived experience, you know, I didn't hear one of them describe it as a holiday camp. So I learned that a lot of things, but definitely that prison is no Butlins.
Thank you, Adam. Just to kind of affirm some of that, we've got Ryan has just sent in a comment. I participated in Street Cones workshops, best people to work with, and showed me more to life than getting in trouble all the time. I've now settled down and am very happy and doing well. So thanks, Ryan. Lindsay, a question possibly for yourself. It's from Elizabeth. What impact has the pandemic had on justice services?
Well, it's had quite an impact as it's had across the board. I think, you know, it's had an impact on us from a social work point of view, just responding in the new landscape. You know, the restrictions that were placed on all of us has been challenging. But the biggest bit for us and the biggest concern for us has been the impact it's had on service users and folk who were struggling with addictions or mental health, being pushed into their home. Folk have really, really struggled with it. We were affected by restrictions and retreated to our homes like everybody else, but very quickly, and I'm talking day one, day two, reshaped and started to prioritise folk who were at highest risk, you know, for a public protection point of view, but highest need. And very, very quickly, we realised that we had to respond, and we started to work quite innovatively with people like Street Cones to look at how we could get online support and provision put in place. We started getting our offices back opened again, started to create safe space for people to come in, but most of all, we were out, chapping doors. We saw the increase in food banks, so we had a lot of welfare support that was being given out into the community. So it's had a huge impact, but I suppose, like a lot of things in life, what doesn't break you, it makes you stronger. And I think we are ready with our sleeves rolled up to come out of this. We're still very much in it, but to come out of it probably more resilient than we went into it. So a lot of what we're doing at the moment is thinking about reflecting on the past 18 months, you know, some of the new things that we've done in relation to technology. We handed out a lot of phones and tablets, which has bridged some communication for folk. And we need to start thinking about that going forward. We need to start engaging with people in a way that's more modern and more contemporary. So one of the big things is I think we're back on our feet again, and I hope that is how it's coming across to our service users and our third sector partners. But equally, we are determined to come out of this having learned lessons, but equally to become stronger and become better so that our community provision, our community services that we are offering to the court and that we're offering to anybody involved in the justice system is better than it was pre-pandemic. So I don't know if that answers the question, but certainly there's certainly a drive, and we hope to come out of it better.
I mean, it definitely shows the complexity of it and the commitment. So thank you, Lindsay. Susan, do you want to say anything? I mean, Shine's a really invaluable service in the community, and I wonder what your take on maybe sharing with people what Shine is, but how have you responded to the pandemic?
Well, Shine works with women who are either in prison on a short sentence or on remand or on a community payback order. We work with them for 6 months, and it's intensive practical and emotional support that we give them. When the pandemic started, the women that were out in the community, everything disappeared for them overnight. Most of their services went, including ourselves. We could only do, phone contact. The women in the prisons, we couldn't go in and see them. It took quite a while to be able to even get any contact with them. We can email them, but we couldn't go in and see them, which we were used to doing. So when they were then coming out into the community, they were coming out with us as their mentors over the phone. They'd never seen us, we'd never seen them. The faceless person at the end of the phone is no use to somebody. One of the most important parts of our job is building a relationship with these women and getting them to trust you. So that kind of left. But gradually phone contact worked. When they were being liberated from prison, we gave them a liberation pack which had toiletries that had a prepaid phone in it that had numbers in it, so they didn't need to look for numbers for services, they didn't need to look for me, my number was in it. So that did help immensely. And now we are back to face-to-face contact, albeit COVID regulations in place. But so, yeah, we coped with it, but I don't think anything for Shine can beat face-to-face contact, one-to-one.
Thank you. Comment from Tracy saying, what a great film, great impact. It should be shown everywhere. So thank you. And I hope people out there will share the film. It is a powerful piece. And following from that, some questions, Brendan and Yvonne, if I can direct to you. So Joanne had said there were powerful testimonies in the film from lived experience. I have a family member currently in prison. I'd like to hear more from the panelists on the impact on families of a prison sentence, if possible. So, Yvonne, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I've had my tenancy for over 10 years. I've been in there for quite a number of years. And obviously, I mean, if you lost your tenancy, you've got to get right, when you come back out, you've got to get right through the system again and get another property. It's just that you've got a lot more to lose when you do a sentence. Yeah. And you put a lot of investment into your house and things like that. And to just start over again, I just think that it adds more stress to people.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've got to start again, rebuilding things. And sometimes people just give up. And say, what's the point? I had all that, now I've not got it. It ends up a lot of the time making people worse. Yeah. I've seen it in lived experience. People just say, give up and, end up in the streets because they think that they can't cope as well. And, and I don't think sending people to prison is the better idea, So I would say that if you could avoid it with a community payback order and things like that, then that would, be more beneficial to people.
Thank you. Brendan, in the film, you're really honest about, how you felt about your family and that first phone call. Do you want to say anything about the impact on your family from you being in custody?
So, basically, when I go to prison, my family go to prison. That's my kids have to deal with my wife every day. My wife has to deal with her kids every day, and then she's worried about me constantly. Like, she would call us every night. Well, sorry, I would try and call her every night if I could. Not every night you would get that phone call. Yeah. So she would also assume something's happened. Yeah. And then if she doesn't answer the phone, I also assume something's happened. But she's the one doing the sentence also. She's the one doing all the travelling, being a mother, being a father at the same time, taking the kids to school, feeding the full shebang. She's like a single parent. And I always say that, man, Nicky always brought up your kids. Like, even when I was at work and stuff like that, she's brought up with 3 kids absolutely amazingly. So she was the one doing absolutely everything. Well, I was inside trying to deal with my stresses, but still, you can't deal with the stresses outside. There's literally nothing you can do. What can a letter do? What can a phone call do? When you come up to visit, you tell them you're okay, but you're not okay. You're putting a brave face on. But yeah, it does affect the family like as a whole. It's not just that person's in prison. That's it. That's affecting my mum and dad. It's affecting my brother, my aunties and stuff like that. So everybody's worried about you constantly, and you try and send up as much as they can with letters wise. Try and book in visits and stuff like that, which don't always happen. So you can never get your hopes up in these kinds of situations.
Thank you, Brendan. Joanne, great question. Thank you for that. Jack, a question here, and I don't know if it's for you or for the taxi driver. You can decide who wants to answer, or if you both want to. Did anyone involved in the video change their mind regarding custodial sentence, having been in part of the film? Do you think it had an impact?
For the character's point of view, it had an impact. Just seeing in the film, and it was quite an emotional scene actually, because we only shot it once or twice, maybe that scene, and it was just the rain had stopped and that, and it was powerful. My own experience regarding custodials, when Brendan was in the film, he was when he was sharing about his experience walking through the hall and stuff like that. My first experience, I was in Berlin prison when I was 20. No, yeah, early 20s. And my father had just died, and I remember being grateful that he died a few weeks before when I was in there, and I was only in for 2 days where my trial was going on. It was and that was enough for me, it was in bottom floor in Sea Hall in Berlin, back in, and you had to slop out and all that, and it's something I didn't want to experience. In later life, I ended up going into prisons. I've been in shots in Berlin and that, through getting in with a couple of fellowships. I had a chaotic drug life, but I managed to get clean after a number of years. And I've seen the devastations, people, in there for murder and various crimes, just people in there that shouldn't be there, coming to the meetings, and you worry for them, you leave them, contact numbers and stuff like that, and hopefully, and a lot of them do, some of them, not a lot of them, maybe 5% would maybe want to change their life when they get out, but fellowship, people talking about this is, we need to engage with people more, because people are just full of shame. I was feeling full of shame. I made a choice, a bad decision, a wrong decision when I was 19, selling drugs to keep my habit, and then, next thing I'm done with intent to supply. In early, mid-80s, you were expecting big sentences for this stuff, and so I end up getting probation for 3 years, and life to me was just full of uncertainty, malevolence. So it was just, I had to, go through my life just masking it with substances, and doing what I can to escape. It was hard work, But yeah, for me, the film was pretty hard hitting. I think for me, I think just watching it there, it was. We don't know, everybody can have opinions, We don't know as we actually, try to put myself in somebody else's shoes. Then.
Well, as you say, I think that that scene at the end of the taxi ride is very powerful, very emotional. I don't think many people here didn't have a lump in their throat as that scene was going on. So, powerful piece. Thank you. Adam, a chance to promote here. We've got Kevin's sent in a question. He's got a family member in Barlinnie, and they heard there's some street cones show going on in Barlinnie. Do you want to tell us what that is?
Certainly. If anyone at home is wondering why me and Tom keep putting our glasses on and reading our phones, we're not updating our Instagram profiles. We are reading the questions that are coming through, and we're both obviously going blind. I don't know if I'm worse or you're worse, but
we'll swap glasses later.
So Kevin, thanks for your question. We are on the 5th of November, I think it's Mental Health Week, and we're going in to read one of the scripts that we've created. So street cones have been one of the silver linings of the pandemic. Is that street cones started to deliver our Road to Change workshops to over half of, or just over 50% of the local authorities around Scotland. And those are workshops that we previously delivered in a physical space, either in Shotts or Barlinnie or Greenock or wherever. And we started to deliver them to people on community payback orders. So people who have got additional work hours on their orders can come into an online 2-hour workshop with any number of our facilitators. And we've got a really great, fantastic bunch of facilitators now. And we, as we do with our physical workshops, start with a blank page. And we, over a period of about 12 weeks, develop a story. And we mine the lived experience of the people in the workshop, but we use what's called the protection of fiction. So people come in, they don't have to divulge any personal information. They come into what we call the privileged environment, and we use fiction to navigate our way through stories, stories that make a difference, stories with a kind of road to change theme. And this particular script that came out of, I think it was the first workshop the first module, or maybe it was the second, but it's called that script was called Sink or Swim, and it had a suicide theme, and essentially all takes place on the suspension bridge over the Clyde, just outside the courtroom, and it's a real powerful story. It's one that I think all of the people involved in it are really proud to have come up with that story. So we are going to, myself and some great street cones facilitators, Gary Sweeney, who some of you might know from River City of Gabriel fame, and Neil Leaper, who's one of our lead facilitators as well. We're going to go in on the 5th of November and read that script for the inmates in Barlinnie. So yeah, really looking forward to that.
That's great. It's nice to see street cones work having a second life to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these scripts, and now there must be a good bank of them, are really moving stories. So I hope they do have a life after the workshops. Yeah.
That's great. Next question, Lindsay, I'm going to put to you if I can. Okay. So it's from Margaret Ann, and I guess it's a reflection of the fact we've been speaking well of community sentences, and the question, and it might be unfair to you, but is why do you think it is then that not more community sentences are being issued, sentenced?
It's almost the $1 million question, because we, you know, the work that Community Justice Glasgow do, the work that we do within the HSCP is trying to promote our wares and promote the successes we feel that community sentences has with people. You know, we collect service user feedback on you know, how that community payback order helped them turn their lives around at that point. Some of the wonderful services out there that become involved when people are made subject to community payback orders, like Shine, like Tomorrow's Women Glasgow, like 218 Project, all the third sector services out there. You know, so I think we try our hardest to promote it, to put effort into highlighting this to the judiciary. So it becomes very frustrating when you see, when we maybe do a court report for someone and we argue heavily for the person to be given a community payback order, to allow them to remain in the community, to have the chance of rehabilitation, because we know that that's not going to happen in custody. And a person is then sentenced to a period in custody. So it's very frustrating. We'll continue to do it. I think, you know, we will continue to try and promote the effectiveness of community sentences, the successes. We'll try to enhance our offering, you know, to our service users, but equally to the judiciary. And we're in a really fortunate position in Glasgow at the moment that we have a Sheriff Principal, Turnbull, who's really progressive in how he is approaching his court, and he's introduced an alcohol court recently and a youth court. So we have a dialogue with the judiciary that we maybe haven't perhaps had in the past, and we want to capitalise on that, and we want to promote that community sentences are robust in the eyes of the judiciary, but equally that they're a better option for folk rather than a period of custody, certainly a short period of custody. But equally, you know, we're fully engaged with victim support. They're around the table, and a lot of folk who are made subject to community payback orders are victims themselves. So we, you know, ensuring that victims feel that they get justice for the crimes that have been committed against is really important to us. And I think having a successful community payback order, you know, if you ask a victim what they want, 9 times out of 10 they'll say they just want that person to get help and to be able to move on and not commit another offence. And I think that's what we would want as well.
Thank you. I mean, I'd like to turn that back to our audience who are out there watching. I mean, you've tuned in today, you've had a chance to hear some of the stories. So, you know, it's also what the public call for. What does the public want from our justice system? Do we want to spend a lot of money on short-term custody? Do we think we should invest more in our community sentences? So talk to your friends, talk to your work colleagues, talk to Jack the taxi driver next time you get a lift, and share your views. So that's important. We've had a lot of questions coming in, and I'm going to put it to you, Susan, because you specifically have been referenced, but a few others might come in, and it's about that the blended response to people. That you were really clear that Shine, the important aspect is that relationship. Mm-hmm. But do you see moving forward any learning you've taken from the online engagement that will feature in how Shine works? And then others can be thinking, because I might turn it to others to respond.
Well, I think the positive effect it had on a lot of the women that we worked with, they began to start doing things for themselves maybe earlier than they would have done if we were working with them face to face and meeting with them. They then had to go and do some stuff which was incredibly difficult for them, and we prepared, maybe coming out of prison, you'll know this, Yvonne, going to the casework teams to try and find yourself somewhere to stay. And you've got to present as homeless at 9 o'clock in the morning. You've not got out of prison till 9:30. You have to be at an office in Glasgow. And then you have to stay there all day to wait to probably find out you've got a hostel place. That's something we would have done with them, but which now they're having to do themselves. But they are doing it, and they are managing it, and it gives them a sense of achievement, maybe a bit more confidence, you know, in being able to do things themselves. And we're certainly very keen on emphasising when we're communicating with them that, you know, they are doing really well and they are capable of doing these things, and that we are helping as much as possible. But, do you know, look at what you've just done. You know, you did that. I wasn't even there. You did it. So you can do it.
Did you want to say anything? Do you think we're going to carry any learning from this era into future services?
Yeah, I would hope that we could be more flexible around about, you know, giving folk phones. You know, poverty remains one of our biggest issues, and we fortunately were given some COVID grant allocation from the Scottish Government, and we've tried to use that in quite an innovative way to, you know, sustain tenancies. So we've used the money to support folk in tenancies, and we would love to be able to just see a need and a requirement and respond, you know, by assisting someone to purchase a washing machine or bedding or towels or just real practical things to make a home. But I think face to face, you know, being able to, you know, comfort someone in person, to be able to have that conversation, it's difficult to move away from it. But I think social work all got WhatsApp on their phone. We would have never have done that pre-pandemic, but it's allowed for that communication. So it's allowed for instance, in Tomorrow's Women, if we've got any furniture or anything, we can WhatsApp a picture of it and send it on to a service user and say, do you fancy this? So it feels as if, technology, we would want it to stay. We would, I think for some folk who are struggling with isolation, some of the work that Street Cones were doing online, I can't see why that shouldn't continue. So yes, I think we probably still are very much dealing with the pandemic and do still need to reflect, but technology, flexibility around about poverty, looking at, online type courses or programmes is certainly something that we would want to be supporting, because if folk do go on to do college courses now or any kind of employment, the chances are there's going to be a degree of online anyway. So it's how the world is moving. So we want to, give folk the tools and skills and tools in order to do that.
Thank you. Jack, earlier you were sharing about your own experience with addictions, and there's a question in from Steph asking do we think that justice services and addiction services are joined up enough? Do you think that they connect?
Justice and addictions, to be honest, I don't really know. It's probably with the pandemic, people not been able to meet up and, everything's done virtually, but we all know the problems with addiction in this country. It's shameful. But I think there needs to be a bridge there. People get, it's that stigma, and it's still there. It's as if, people for me, I was just, my problems stemmed from fear, when I was younger, and, the more I took drugs, the more baggage I got, and the more society told me I was bad. I felt shame for being me. Mm-hmm. And I tried various ways and means to get away from myself, and fortunately I came out there, I managed to, it took me a lot, maybe until I was 36, until I got my life in order. But I've had many, all people I grew up with, most of them grew up with and started experiment with it. They're all dead. Most of them are dead, and they never had anywhere to go after coming out of prison. Things like that. Anybody give them? You need to be. You come out of prison, and you just go and do the same thing, because it's if there's nothing for you, because you're full of fear. More fear, It must be really scary getting out of prison if you're locked up for so. And the next thing you're amongst people and things of. You need to give time, and you need people to peers maybe to just see if somebody else can do it, you can do it, and incrementally we get. I can only speak for myself. I got well very slowly, but when I started to realise I was doing things for myself, was it putting the lid in the toothpaste, cleaning my room, all these things, that I just didn't want to get out of bed, getting out of bed, and especially if you've got somebody there at the end of your phone and you can go and see somebody. That's what it was for me. It was the contact with people, and just, identifying with people and realising, we're all the same, I'm 59 and I'm still bluffing it, thinking I'll be, I think, you know, I don't know what I'm doing, you know. I just get up in the morning and, you know, if I feel like shit, I just pick up the phone. I just try and, sometimes I try and get up before my head does and get out the door, you know. Especially this last wee while, it's, you know, it's been hard for everyone, you know, and thank God people are meeting like this again, you know. Anyway, that's my...
Thank you.
Asked that same question to Yvonne as well. Yvonne, you talked in the film, and when I interviewed you, you were very candid about that experience of addiction and recovery. And so that question about, is there enough of a connection? Is there enough connect between your sentence and recovery? Because they feed each other and sometimes not always.
I know what you're saying. Well, my personal experience from me was it was a number of years that I had struggled with, you know, being different. Reactions were different, you know. I just became like a different person. And it took me a while to get the help, which obviously I was going up and down to courts and stuff, but they didn't know what to do with me. And I didn't obviously know what was wrong with me. So, like, kind of, it was like a cry for help almost for me. And I wasn't coping with my life. There was all sorts. Police was in, you know, at my home constantly. Everybody was suffering, but I think that maybe like, if there was more support back then, I might have avoided the custodial sentence. You know, maybe if there was more things put in place at that point with Shine and Tomorrow's Women and Turning Point and whoever else has helped me throughout the years. I'm thinking, I don't know now, but I'm thinking that maybe they're being a bit more lenient with people and trying to give them orders and things like that. But I don't know if they know a lot about all the services like, say, Street Cones and Tomorrow's Women and, you know, because I've tried to say to a few people, go to Tomorrow's Women, you know, and they're like, what's that? And it's sad sometimes that you've got to be in the criminal justice. I just say, go out and get the jail and then you'll get involved in it. And I'm joking, but you know what I'm saying? It's kind of, a lot of people need help and they've not been in the justice system, so they can't go. So it's like, you know, people out with that need the help and support, but just because they've no like committed a crime, you know, that but I used to say, and I'd be like, well, I need to commit a crime first to get noticed, and you know, and as an actor, like, you're self-harming, you're seeking attention, you don't know what's up with you, they don't either. And obviously it takes time for, you know, for them to get to the point. They didn't know what to do with me. I didn't know what to do with myself, so they locked me up. And when I was there, I just noticed that it was a bunch of people really seeking help. You know, a lot of the things that I'd seen, I was blown away. And I was thinking, maybe if they just had that wee nurturing, a wee bit of support, you know, guided in life. Some of them are really young, you know, some of them are old. And not everybody's fortunate enough to have good parents and supportive families, and, you know. But all I can say is for the past 8 years that these services like Shine, Tomorrow's Women, Turning Point, they've all been there for me. So I loved giving back to them, you know, and I'll always be thankful for them, because there's been times where I've obviously needed them, and I don't even think that maybe I wouldn't be here if I didn't have the support for Shine, Tomorrow's Women, because I've been with every one of them. So that's the level of support that you do get. But I think it would be beneficial if the courts would do more of that stuff, like send people to like Shine, Tomorrow's Women, Turning Point, because clearly I've done it. And I'm in the process to trying to send people, and I'm like, go there, you know. But hopefully people do just seek the help. And if there was more of that, maybe people, as you say, go and let Shine up to the prison saying, look, we can help you. Because nobody knows what to do. When you come out of there, you're like, where do I go? And most of the people slip back down the same road because that's all they know. They don't have any structured support. And some people just don't get it. And I've lost so many people through my life in recovery, and who's been in Turning Point with me, Tomorrow's Women, and it's sad to see it. So it's just, I think that it would be better if the justice system would be promoting more of the Tomorrow's Women and shine, etc. So yeah, I think it would be a good thing. Thank you.
No, thank you, Yvonne. That's really helpful, because actually we've got a comment from Izzy here from the NHS saying that, you know, not enough people, maybe even in the public, realise the connection between issues like mental health and poverty and crime, and therefore if people don't know about the services and don't connect that, so no, it's a valid point. We need to do more. I've got a question. I don't know if, Brendan, you've got the mic. Maybe you might want to pick it up, or Yvonne. No. It's from Gordon, and so far we've been kicking short sentences. We've not really asked a question, and Gordon's asked it. Are there any benefits from short prison sentences? Should we be highlighting anything that's come in? Yeah.
Well, to be quite honest, I mean, I'm not going to lie, right? When I had that sentence, this short sentence that you're speaking about there, I got a fright. I was like, I'm never going back there again. I'll walk hell and water. I will do anything in my power not to do that again. So it did give me a wake-up call. As I said, when I was there, I was like, geez, what, you know, and it was like, I'm going to get help. I'm going to get help. I need to get help, you know, and it kind of lets you see that's the path you go. That's what happens. And I don't know if it was designed to do that, to give me a fright, but it hell of a worked.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Do you want to say anything, Brendan? Do you?
I only done one sentence. That was enough for me. That was an eye opener. It was just enough to go. No, never again. Like, nah, never. Wouldn't do it well. People say never, but there's better chances in the world. I'll never do it again. But yeah.
Okay. Back to Lindsay or Susan, and this is from Hannah. Do you think that justice services, including third sector services, are funded and supported enough to deliver what's needed? You can choose who goes first.
I think the funding is a huge issue for the third sector, because that's where I work, so that's what I know, and it's year-to-year funding. Mm-hmm. So there's not very much stability in your job for staffing, and also for service users, in particular for the women that we work with. We can't guarantee we're going to be there the next year or the next time. So I think that, I mean, even something longer guaranteed than a year even would help. But I understand, and we all understand, that there are, you know, other uses for the money, but I think community payback orders are going to work so much better if the supports are in place for people to help them complete their orders successfully, because there has to be alternatives to custody. Yeah. And therefore, I think there's no point in starting a service and developing a service and seeing it's working well, and then a year later taking the funding away, and even though that service is done really well, it just goes. So yeah. I've had that in the past where you think, why are they going to give a community payback order? Why are they going to give bail supervision? Because one, do they know how long the service is going to be there for? And two, do we even know the service is out there to use? So it could go on forever, but that's mine, Lindsay.
Probably not. I couldn't agree more with Susan. I think year-in-year funding doesn't offer the third sector stability and the room to grow and develop. So it's really challenging out there. I think from a justice point of view, we're fortunate in Glasgow, given the resources that we have, given, you know, the partnership we have with Community Justice Glasgow and all the innovations that go on in such a big city. But what we feel as if we have on occasions is funding to deliver on our strategy. So what I mean in that is that we're given a budget in relation to how many community payback orders are made year in year. But I think what we need to do is we need to inject more funding into, you know, non-traditional looking responses to community sentences, like, you know, street cones, you know, like some of the third sector services, like, really innovative projects. Again, we've really benefited from having additional funding from Scottish Government as part of our response to COVID. We've set up a lived experience mentor service from SACRO. We've looked, to develop stronger pathways into addictions, fund some stabilisation type activity. And if we had some additionality, we would want to develop and transform and renew our services to look beyond just our bread and butter, and that you need to come in for your CPO appointment once a week for the first month, and then, every 2 weeks. We want to give an enhanced service, and we're very lucky in Glasgow, and that we get support from Shine, but we've been able to develop Tomorrow's Women, which is trauma informed, which doesn't look like a social work department, which reaps great rewards day in, day out. So I would. We all want more money, don't we? But certainly it would be good to get some more injected funding to allow us to be more creative about how we engage with people, because everybody's different. Everybody's at a different stage in their journey, in their rehabilitation, and films, being involved in creative arts is something that really chimes with people. We've done a lot of work with Citizens Theatre through Tomorrow's Women Glasgow as well, and it's the breadth of all of that someone could just find that one thing that turns things around for them.
Thank you. I mean, that's really helpful to highlight all that innovation, but maybe the limits. I mean, I'd put the question back to Hannah, who posed the question to others there, to read about the financing of justice, and you'll find some of that in our annual report. You might also look to Audit Scotland and read some of their reports. They'll tell you that in Scotland, and this is a report going back a few years, so the numbers will have risen, but that offending in this country costs us £4 billion a year. Of that, about 70% is reoffending. So somewhere in the justice system, we're letting people go through again and again, and we're spending money on it. The other thing we've done in our own attempts at analysis of that in Glasgow is identify that of the money that is spent on justice in the city, about 14% is preventative. That's the money that's spent on trying to prevent that reoffending cycle, trying to look at the community investment of justice. And the remainder is reactive. It's the money we spend on the courts, on prisons, on other elements of the justice system that may not be as effective at preventing the reoffending. So I hope people will take some opportunities to read more and again be active in your own communities around that. Just a second, I've lost thread on questions here. Here's a good one, and I'll open it because people may have their own views, but this is from Paul. How can we get the judiciary more informed about community sentences? There may be a presumption there that they aren't, and that may or may not be a fair presumption, but how do we make sure that the opportunities of community sentences are well informed?
I'd like to say that Street Cones films get a broader audience. Maybe somebody watching will forward some of our filmed content, of which there's a growing bank of it now, to the BBC or STV or, 20th Century Fox. But I think the films are a help. I think that does answer that question, because there does need to be, and that was one of the learnings, I think, that they're still out in the public, not in ignorance, but a lack of knowledge about what community sentences are. People have heard the phrase community service, and they're like, people in orange jumpsuits painting community fences. But I think what we've learned, certainly what I've learned about community payback orders, is they're a bit more nuanced than that. And with the kind of work that Street Cones have been able to do, as well as other third sector organisations, is develop a more tailored and more sophisticated approach to dealing with community payback orders, because there's absolute value in pick and litter, and there's absolute value in building picnic benches and things like that, but there's also value in what we like to call picking the litter of the mind, and that's doing creative work like writing a script. And there's a comment there from Liam, who's a recent participant in one of our online workshops, who just, he's benefited so much from this work, and he would never have come into a creative space before. Never. And through the safety of the online environment, he felt able to kind of flourish, really, and over a period of weeks. He's now has been the lead actor in some of the workshops we've done and some of the readings, as well as just being a real creative force in the building of that script. So for a lot of people, we need more than just painting fences. And I hope that's something that's come out of this period that we've been in the last 18 months or so.
Do others want to come in? Jack, you were in the film. You clearly had a really powerful role within that film. Do you think that this is a tool to talk to the judiciary?
Yeah, the film, using the film, the media film. Yeah, why not? You know, anything that gets people talking, as Adam was saying there, you know, it's okay going and doing something, you know, painting fences and cutting hedges and all this stuff, you know, it's, but I don't think there's, when you go do these, I don't think there's much, it's all bravado, all the boys are out, it's all bravado, you know, whatever they're doing, you know, and it's, coming, we spoke about it earlier, coming together, speaking, being creative, finding out what you can do, what you can, you know, just talking, finding out what things you can bring to life, some of your assets, you know. This is, you know, I'm talking about, this is what happened with myself, you know, and I had to realise that life wasn't all negative, you know. There was a lot of beauty in life as well, you know, and you know, a lot of challenges, and been up for meeting them, and you know, but the film, yeah, I think the film, you know, films like that would be, you know, it would be the way, you know, it'd be good.
Maybe you'll be in the next film too.
Hopefully, I'm trying to sell myself here, but I'm not doing too well.
Thank you.
A heavier price.
A heavier price.
We've skirted around an issue, and someone's put it in a comment here, but we haven't used the word trauma. I don't know, maybe if Susan and Lindsay want to talk about services and whether you feel trauma is an issue in justice, and how can services respond?
Certainly, from my perspective, I think trauma is a massive issue within justice. I think it's probably our number one issue, you know, and we try to look at, you know, tackling justice head on through a public health lens. We are in the process of training staff around about stabilisation for trauma. I went through the training recently myself, and it really is quite powerful about how complex trauma impacts on folk across the board, whether it be our service users, whether it be experiences our staff have had in their own personal lives. But I think it's a huge issue. It leads to addictions. You know, it's more. High percentage of mental health is underlaid by complex childhood trauma. So it's a massive issue, and how we shape our services and develop services in conjunction with co-productive services, in conjunction with people with lived experience, but just as importantly, people with living experience that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis is critical. And we're starting to look within justice services within Glasgow about a whole system approach to dealing with trauma. And what I mean by that is, you know, from the letter that we send out for that missed appointment, rather than the letter saying you've missed your appointment, you're at risk of breach, it should be differently worded. It should be really concerned that you've not met your appointment. Can we? I'm going to try and give you a phone. We need to be more mindful of presenting behaviour, what's triggering, can be triggering folk, and we need to be responding and delivering services on that basis. So Tomorrow's Women Glasgow is a perfect example of that. Doesn't look like a social work department. There is no, you don't have to wait in a waiting area. You can just go into the kitchen and make yourself a cup of tea. There's soft furnishings. It's a nurturing environment, and that's what we need to work towards. So, number one issue, and it's something that we need to get right, but we need to get it right alongside service users who have lived experience, but we need to be consulting with the folk who are using their services just now to make sure that any future shape is got trauma front and centre.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything, Susan?
Exactly what Lindsay said. Plus, I would say a very, very high percentage of the women that Shine works with their lives are chaotic because they've had all they've known is trauma and abuse from a young age, and that is just leads them down that road. And so, yeah, it needs to be.
If we don't understand it, we'll not respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot of questions or comments coming in about stigma, and I guess it's fair to say, Yvonne and Brendan, you've been brave to be interviewed on the film, to come and join us today. Do you think there's stigma out there if people have been in prison or if they've been before the courts and served a community sentence? And if so, what should we do about it? Yeah, you.
I do think that, like, if you're sitting somewhere and you say to somebody, like, I've been in prison, they totally, they're like, whoa, like, stay away from that. And the stigma is that they think that you've done something dramatically wrong, but they don't understand, like, because of childhood trauma, etc., growing up and living a normal world, a normal life, we have mental health problems, etc., as a hard life. So there is a lot of stigma. Like, people just think that, that you're a regular in there, or that they treat you different, or they automatically presume that you're one of the worst people. But obviously, trying to change yourself as well. Like, sometimes it doesn't matter, because I'm like, right, okay, I've been in prison before. Should I tell people about that? Will they judge me? So I'm like, and then you've got to be honest about telling people who you're connected with as well. So it is a bit of a hard one, because I didn't go to prison because I'm a bad person. I went to prison because I needed help, and the things that I was getting myself involved in was risky. But it doesn't make me a bad person. Making bad choices in life to get help and become more stable was what I'd actually needed. And I remember, like, I finally got that, but I mean, I was in the justice system for about 3 years, the cops everywhere at my door. I knew half of them. They were like, how you doing? But then I remember one time I got an order, and it was like I was ordered to the psychiatric CPN, and oh my God, that was a lifesaver for me. I spoke to, they obviously down at Tomorrow's Women as well, they have nurses as well who you can talk to about your emotions, your feelings, and I was like, I'm back. Oh, I was going to swear. I was like, I've lost the plot. I don't know what's up with me, basically. And they kind of like nurtured me, and we're having that for the court order that I was to basically like find out what's wrong with her. Do you know what I mean? It was like get her sorted, and basically that's what they done. It was now like work with a community psychiatric nurse. I got some medication, and see, since that medication, my mood has been like, it's obviously helped the situation, and that's what I find with a lot of people in addiction. But then again, they say because of I'm going on about the health side of it, because that means a lot to me. But they say it's the alcohol and the drink and the drugs. But I mean, I've obviously had the period of abstinence as well from that, and I know that it's not that. So you're having an argument here with the health professionals, and sometimes they think maybe that people are at it, and there's a few people that I know, and they've got brilliant potential. Their life could be so much amazing, but they have these underlying issues. Some are diagnosed, some are undiagnosed. So I think that me personally, my thought is, let's try and treat them a wee, you know, so treat them a wee bit more, and if they're depressed, you know, because a lot of it stems from there, and then teach them maybe, like I was in Turning Point, rehab, Tomorrow's Women, but I get shown this ACEs, and I did not know that half of this stuff is through my childhood and the way that I grew up and the person who I'd become, and it was because all that, and people see that. When I'd seen that, I was like, geez, it made me realise that I wasn't a bad person. It was just because of, you know, the way that, no my upbringing, you know, but things that have happened that shouldn't have happened through my life. And sometimes people are strong enough to fight it and other people can't alone. So it's just seek the help if you can, that's all I'm saying, and work with all these services and try and promote the services a lot more, because there's a lot of people out there who do need the supports and the help.
Well, thanks. Yourself and Brendan being along today obviously helps break down that stigma, you know, showing a real face to the experience you have. Do you want to say anything else? Yvonne's insisting, I think.
So, what was the question again? 'Cause I was
It's about stigma. Do you think there's stigma, and what should we do about that stigma?
Yeah, well, yeah, as soon as you mentioned you've been in prison, people just assume that you're in there for the bad things. Like, it could be the stupidest reason, just 1 minute, and then that's you banged up. But yeah, there's the stigma behind it as soon as you mention it. Yeah, I think my mind's went pure blank now. So,
Like, what you've articulated, and Brendan, your interview that we did with you, in fact, with Yvonne and all of the people, we've got the long form interviews of each of the lived experience people in the film. But you were really articulate in that interview, talking about the stigma when you came out, because you've both, in fact, everyone that's featured in the film have had what street cones call the road to change moment. You know, I mean, like, Brendan's got his own gym now, his own personal fitness and business, and he's doing really, really well. He's managed to overcome that stigma. But I think, like, how do we as a society overcome it? For me, I feel like the answer is compassion. I think that's the thing that's lacking, and I think that's what Yvonne was talking about there. If we had compassion at the heart of it, that doesn't mean we can't be corrective. It can't mean that we can't have prisons, I suppose. But if we're viewing it through a compassionate lens or a compassionate prism, we'll make different choices, because, you know, I think your experience speaks volumes, Yvonne, in terms of what could have been avoided, what kind of additional trauma could have been avoided with, you know, a more compassionate judiciary, you know, with a more compassionate system, and realising that not everybody, and we know this, street cones know this from our experience, and we've worked with high tariff offenders in places like Shotts. Not everybody is in there because they're bad people. They're people responding to usually a chaotic and traumatic life experience. And so, you know, we as a society need to move away from that. So for me, so maybe it's because of my work, but if I meet somebody who's been in prison, I'm immediately interested. I'm like, wow, what's your story? What's your experience? But you're right, as a society, there is a bit like, oh God, you've been in prison, you know, and we think of the worst possible thing instead of like, wow, what's your story and how did that happen?
Yeah, no, that's better for me.
Yeah, can I say something? It's like, it's right. It's like you hit a point there where you were saying, like, you're finding out things about yourself, it's how you were brought up, and, you know, something's happened. It's made, you know, for me, you know, when I look back, it was something twisted my character somewhere along the line. It was way back, you know, when I could, and it wasn't until it took me years to look at that stuff and see it for what it was. A lot of it was just, it's not real. It's just fear. It's just fear. Is how I perceive things. Yeah, we need to, you know, learn to, first of all, to listen to people. Just to listen, have a bit, you know, and take that look inside. Because for me, I went about, you know, and picked external things to make me feel good. or whole or whatever you want. You know, it's emotional sickness that these drugs or alcohol or this woman or this, you know, it could be like if I go there, geographic, because I did many of them, you know, I could reinvent myself and all this stuff, and then realising that it started, so it was trauma, you know, trauma somewhere, you know, just, you know, carrying this baggage, more and more baggage, letting more people down, hurting more people, taking more drugs, you know. And prison's just full of drug addicts and alcoholics, you know. They're in there for something else other than that, you know. The alcohol and the drugs is probably holding them together. It's a solution, you know. The problem is life and how we deal with people, relationships. That was my problem. I don't know how to relate to anyone, you know. People just scared me. So we need to be compassionate, you know, because we're all the same. Everybody, you know, we get a bit, you know, putting this persona, you know, call it what it is, you know. We're all human. We all feel fear and insecure, and you know, and it's okay to talk about it, you know.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you. And
we've just had a comment from Libby online relating to this and talking about trauma and how right Yvonne is, but also recommending a film that I'd like to underline as well, which is Resilience, which is on YouTube, and it's all about trauma and ACEs and things like that, which is stuff I remember when I first heard about ACEs, you know, and adverse childhood experiences, and you're right, you know, it's...
Heads up, you're like, whoa, I'm no... Oh, sorry. Yeah, I totally agree with that, because when I was... fortunately, I had the chance, the opportunity, when I was in rehabilitation just a few months ago there, and I had a chance to do the ACEs, and as I said, I was like, geez, and it woke me up a lot. So I think that maybe if people had a wee bit more education on that, and I got CBT as well, which I never had the opportunity. Maybe it's because I felt ready this time, I don't know, but I had all these opportunities, and when I did it, I had a different mindset. I was like, so, you know, because I'm thinking about, like, am I crazy? Why is this happening? And it gives you a wee bit more understanding about yourself. And so you go a wee bit easier on yourself, and you think, right, okay, I'm not a bad person. I've made these choices. This is why I'm like the way I am. You know, and then maybe progress to get some counselling or help or whatever else it may be. But, yeah, I think people would benefit a lot more if there was, like, ACEs and CBT and education, and perhaps what you're saying about the phones and technology. Not a lot of people know how to use technology, especially in addiction. You know, they say, I'll say Google it, and they're like, I don't know how to Google, you know, I don't. And I'm like, whoa, you know. But even maybe educational classes where how to use them, you know, how to switch on, how to use Google, how to search for things, because that comes baffling. People have spent so long not being able to do it, they've been out their head. Give them a phone, and they're like, half of them are using me bashers because they don't know how to use the up-to-date phones. So, yeah, it's just...
Very positive messages. And we've got quite a host of questions left, but unfortunately we're nearly out of time. So I'm sure right now there's a lot of things we'd like to sum up. I think if we finish with Adam's word about us all being more compassionate, there's something we can walk away with. I'm sure out there's a virtual applause, but I'm going to ask Lindsay if you wouldn't mind saying a last few words for us.
Yeah, everybody would agree, I'm sure, who've been watching this, that the film was thought-provoking, emotional. I think the acting was fabulous.
Second that. Well done, Jack.
No,
and
absolutely.
And Kirsty Strain as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did a fantastic job.
And Yvonne and Brendan's contribution, again, was really, really powerful. So, great production. Is that the right terminology, Adam?
Yes. Good production.
Editing.
Yeah. Shout out to Jonathan Marcus Metzine, who's in the audience watching this, who shot it and was the creative producer on it. So him and I came up with the original idea. But to Jack and Kirsty, I think you did a tremendous job of taking that story and making it very, very real. for everyone. So big
No,
kudos
absolutely.
to you both.
So, and again, I think it's another medium to get the message out there, and I think we need to be doing more of it, and I think we need to, you know, be taking it forward and trying to get it in front of the judiciary, trying to get it in front of Police Scotland, trying to get it in front of SPS. So I think that's a task that we can take away from today. I want to thank the panel. I think this has been a really stimulating, interesting discussion. It's also very nice just to be with people, and you know, it still feels very new that we're in the company of folks, so that's nice. But also, you know, for Community Justice Glasgow, I think the annual report, the annual plan, which I had a look over last night. Again, you know, it just gets better every year, and I think that I would urge folk to go through it, to look at it online, to see the work that we're showcasing here in Glasgow. Very, very proud of working in Glasgow and being a Glaswegian. I think we've got such great services, and I hope that we're starting to think differently about how we deliver on services that is taking into consideration the discussions and the points that we've been raised today. Trauma, if we get our staff trauma trained, then they'll be having those discussions, Yvonne, that you've had around about ACEs, and that light bulb will come on for other service users. So yeah, really enjoyed the discussion. Again, urge you to have a look at the annual report. But thank you for joining us. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
I think we can have a clap, can't we?
Yeah.
I never want my